cannot believe what I just sat through, okay? It was bad, okay? We've seen some good PlayStation State of Play in the past year or so. So I went into this like thinking that maybe it would be a trend. Maybe we would start seeing more Japanese games again. Maybe we would stop seeing so much woke stuff. And I suppose there has been like one radical shift over the past year or so, is that we are starting to see more attractive girls in games again. Outside of that, though, like everything is a giant dumpster fire. There was nothing good in this showcase. It's shocking how Wolverine and God of War, two games made by like two completely different studios, how they look the same, how they play the same, how they have the same aesthetic. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre how little variety there is in these presentations. Like, they all begin the same way with like the dramatic entrances, and then they get to the action, and then they have like, ooh, stay tuned for more. It's like none of these games look original or interesting. Like, I was watching this Wolverine trailer in particular, and I was just like, this looks pretty much identical to X-Men Origins back in the day, that 2-hour-long Wolverine game that came out. Like, it has the same exact style, the same mechanics, it has like the same emphasis on like gore and violence. And like, I don't know if I'm the only one to think this, because we were talking about this in the chat while I was watching this, but like, I am sick to death of seeing gore in like everything. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, now that I'm older and like seeing so much of this stuff, it really does feel as if it's forced and if it's like try-hardish. Okay. Like, to me, it doesn't really make much sense how like everything's so bloody and everything's so violent, and yet like it just feels really sterile and fake in a way. Like, when you look at something like Bayonetta, you get like a more sense of style and elegance and just, more creativity. Like, it has gore in it, but it's not overbearing and it's not like distracting. And I think this is the trend now where everything wants to be Mortal Kombat, where it's just like blood everywhere, but it doesn't have any real emotional weight to it. It doesn't have any like real stakes. Like, I'm watching this Wolverine trailer, right? And I'm just kind of out of nowhere just like, how much do these guys get paid to just like fire bullets at Wolverine, which can't possibly hurt him? Like, they can't possibly do anything to stop this mutant. But like, yeah, they're just going to stand there and just like shoot guns at him. And like, it kind of dawned on me, like, why does the enemy not have mutants of their own? Why are you never going up against mutants? Why do these guys not have their own crazy powers that you have to adapt to and like fight against on the fly? Because that would take work. That would take effort. That would take something like far beyond Insomniac. Okay. This game looks no different than all the other third-person action games we've seen out of PlayStation over the past like 10 years. Like, it is baffling, seeing this game. It is baffling seeing like, everything else they announced. Ikumi Nakamura has come out of hiding, after, I suppose her E-fame has dried up. She comes out of nowhere and she's like, hey guys, remember me? Like, and then she basically shows off a game that's like very clearly like the spiritual sequel to like Tokyo Ghostwire. And I'm just like, bro, like, find something else. Like, stop making everything about yokai. Stop making everything about spirits. And stop trying to be, like, cute. You're, like, 40, okay? Like, stop. You're old. Like, I'm just, like, I'm watching her, and I'm just, like, when is this hoe gonna, like, go away? Like, I don't understand why she's been able to coast, like, off of one successful Game Awards appearance, like, her entire career. Like, she's the only person I can think of who has had like a noticeable burst in popularity after a Game Awards appearance. And that's entirely because like the audience of like incel man children just wanted to fuck her. It was disgusting. I've been saying this since that happened, which I believe was several years ago now. Like, I want to say like it was 6-7 years ago, but like, Tango Gameworks is done. Tokyo Ghostwire was a complete flop when it came out, and there's no doubt in my mind that like Nakamura's game is going to go down the same direction. And like another thing, what is with the overabundance of Marvel? Because like they start off with Marvel and then they go into like Token, which is like anime Marvel, and it looks shit. It looks not as good as Guilty Gear. It looks not as good as Dragon Ball FighterZ Z. And like Guilty Marvel in general is not as good as anime, but like I feel as if like Token in particular just looks so basic and so simplistic. I can't imagine anybody would be excited for it other than like hardcore FGC nerds and people like Darkside Phil who like desperately wanted those limited edition Wolverine toys so that they can flex on their friends. Like, I don't understand the appeal of these characters. Like, I don't understand why you would get excited over a Marvel game, a Marvel fighting game, when Street Fighter looks better, it plays better, it has better characters, it's a better fighting game in general. Like, other than the whole novelty of, like, using the Marvel cast in a fighting game, which, let's be fair, has been done to death at this point, like, what exactly does Token offer? Like, I mean, you can say pretty clearly that, yeah, it's better than Wolverine, but that's really not saying much, okay? And then you get to all the other announcements. And one of the things I've noticed is that low-key, a lot of the games that got confirmed already have Switch 2 ports announced. Tomb Raider's coming, that Ori spiritual successor is coming. Like we have a lot of hard confirmations that a lot of games are coming to Switch 2. And I imagine that a lot of these other games are also coming to Switch 2 as well. Like, I'd like to see Onimusha come over. I'm sure Token's going to come over eventually. Like, there's lots of examples of this. But, like, I'm watching this presentation, and, like, other than Onimusha, there isn't a single thing that looks good. Like, genuinely good. Like, everything else just seems like below average at best. And they capped it off in, like, the worst way imaginable, where they announced Mod of War, where you play as Kratos' dead waifu, who is, like, in the afterlife for some reason, and she's, like, being beset by, like, I don't know, Slifer the Sky Dragon and his waifu. Like, it's, like, this really weird, like, spin-off game that, like, doesn't seem to appeal to anybody. And like, this is the problem with a lot of these franchises, is that, like, they don't seem to have a direction. They don't seem to have an identity. Like, these days, like, the average AAA experience is just like, establish a popular male character and then replace him with a girl. Like, again, this has been like the trend forever. We saw it with The Last of Us. We're seeing it now with Witcher 4. And now we have confirmation that, like, they're doing the same thing with God of War. Like, with a character that basically was a non-entity until the 2018 reboot. A character that nobody really cares about, and a character that, like, just doesn't really seem to work, honestly. It's just one of those things where, like, you look at this game, and God of War is not the kind of IP that can handle multiple playable characters and, like, handle, like, deviate from, like, its established formula. Like, at this point, and I genuinely believe this, like, God of War really should have just been a new IP, because, like, it has nothing in common with the original God of War games. It's so far removed from them that, like, it honestly feels like a completely different IP. And it is. Kratos is not like himself. The story makes no sense. Like, it really wants to be like the trad dad, like, base traditionalist, like, woke soy boy, just, like, weird propaganda. But, like, at its core, it's just, like, it's just not that interesting. Like it's crazy watching the gameplay for this, and unironically seeing that one of the characters is like a giant cube of Jello. It, like, is legit, like, it's a piece of Jello with, like, a magic sword struck to it. And the sword, by the way, it looks exactly like Honedge. if you played Pokemon and you know the lore, like how Honedge is a ghost type and the tentacles, like, you grab the sword and it like, clutches onto your arm for like prey. Like it looks like a fucking Pokemon. And they unironically do this thing where you're thrown into prison and like, oops, these guys that can help you are right next to you. And like you immediately break out and you immediately like defeat your captors. There's no like gravitas to it. There's no like feeling of like comeuppance. There's no like working towards it. The example I came up with when I was watching this, like, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, the prison sequence in that game took like an hour. Okay. You got to meet the antagonists. You got to meet like, you got to set up like a lot of plot aspects and you got a really good payoff, right? And it took like an hour to set up and it was built off of like the entire game up to that point. It's like a mind-blowing like revelation, like what happens in that sequence. And like, you have Dragon Quest 4, right? Where you spend 10 years in prison with Prince Harry and you become friends and like, you break out eventually. Like you don't get thrust into like a jail cell, after dying, like you're in the afterlife and then immediately break out and start like killing people. Like it doesn't make any sense. And again, this is like the issue with God of War in general is that it has this weird power scaling where it genuinely seems to think that like you can just go out and like kill gods or whatever. It's like it doesn't really seem to understand its own mythology that well because it has this idea that like, well, you can't kill Kratos because he's just too powerful. But then it has this like on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah, you just kill a god and that's it. They can't like, come out of the underworld like he did. There's no like there's no possible way they could beat Kratos because he's just too powerful and he's just too angry. It's like it's just stupid at its core. And we're kind of seeing that stupidity kind of extend to his waifu, who's supposed to be this like warrior woman who is just not very convincing in the role, like at all. Like she seems kind of average. She seems kind of mid. I was like watching this and I'm just kind of like, why exactly did Kratos settle down with this mid after like banging Aphrodite and her two handmaidens? Like I don't get it, like it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's not something that feels like a natural progression. It doesn't feel wholesome. It just feels really forced and lazy. And like people just don't seem to want to accept it. Actually, this time it feels like this is the first time we've seen with the reboot God of Wars that people are actively being like openly critical of them online. Because like nobody wanted to see this. It just seems like a waste of resources. Like it doesn't really fit into like the established canon, not even just with the original games, but even with like 2018. Like the entire idea that secretly like Maud was like going around just fighting people in the afterlife is just like, it's just goofy. It doesn't make any sense. It like completely goes against like the themes of the first game. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of ways, I feel like the only way they could have possibly handled this idea is like keeping the wife a bit of a mystery and like not actually showing her. Cause like, now that you actually see her, it's like the mystery's gone and the intrigue is gone. And like, you just can't really take it seriously. It's just unbelievably cringy. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's like, it's embarrassing. It's downright bad. And I don't think I'm alone in this because I'm looking at like, the reception of this state of play online. And it really feels like to me that most people are in agreement that like this was an epic fail for Sony. Okay. Nintendo did nothing and they still won. Okay. Like Nintendo's going to have more games in like the first 5 seconds of the no, wait, no, that's wrong. No, Nintendo has more games before the Nintendo Direct than Sony had after theirs. Because this is what people don't realize about the Nintendo Switch too, is that like people are announcing games for it all the time. Just in the past couple of weeks alone, we got like Animalith and like we got that other like two-player like horror game from like the Order 1886 guys. Like, and then we're going to have the actual Nintendo Direct, and then we're going to see like, actual follow-up material. Like, again, this is the baffling thing about this is that Nintendo is dominating the console space right now. And And there seems to be this refusal to acknowledge it. Because, like, the only thing in this presentation that looked good was, like, Onimusha 4. And that's probably going to get ported to Switch 2 anyway. So, like, Onimusha 4, like, is the only game in this entire lineup that looks remotely playable, and it's not even, like, an exclusive, okay? Like, even if it doesn't come to Switch 2, I would just get it on PC. You know, you look at, like, everything else they're putting out, and you just get this sense that, like, they're just not all that competitive. You know, you see Ace Combat 6 and you're just like, I'm sorry, Ace Combat 8, and you're just like, this looks unbelievably cringe, and it's not going to compete with Star Fox. Like, that's just the reality of it. Like, Star Fox has already beaten Ace Combat 8. Like, Ace Combat 8 can't do anything to compete with Star Fox. After years of, like, Ace Combat 8 shilling, this is the end result of it. Is that it's getting completely 100% mogged by Star Fox. You know, and you just look at everything else that's coming out, like, and you just get this sense. You get this honestly, like, genuine sense that, like, everything is failing right now. Like, these projects have been in, like, development for, like, probably almost a decade. I think we were hearing about Wolverine before even Spider-Man 1 came out. So yeah, like, this is, like, the big play. These are, like, the big PS5 games. There's nothing else that's coming down the line. This is it. Like, this is, like, the swan song for the system. You're going to see, like, Wolverine and God of War, Mod of War, and that's it. Like, there's just nothing else. Like, this is an absolute dumpster fire. And I'm not sure if people, like, understand just how bad things look for PlayStation right now. Like, I genuinely don't think they're ever going to recover from this. They still have not recovered from the release of The Last of Us Part 2. Like, as they keep doubling down on certain things, as they keep, like, you know, pushing female protagonists, as they keep making things woke, as they keep, like, you know, undermining, like, the general community, like, what we're going to see is more and more announcements like this. Like, games that come and go like the wind.